Minister of Foreign Affairs Hakan Fidan, and moderator SETA General Coordinator to the stage, please. Distinguished Minister, esteemed ladies and gentlemen, in the new century of Türkiye, Turkish foreign policy vision, goals, and transformation. Welcome to our special session. Our Foreign Minister, Mr. Hakan Fidan, we thank them in this busy era and taking some time from their schedule to attend here. We thank them. And our program today has a format. Our format is question and answer. And then similarly, we're going to be taking your questions written, and our friends are going to extend those questions to our esteemed minister. Our program is also broadcasted on the digital platforms of SETA, and you can follow it there. Of course, there was a lot of application for this program, so we couldn't really have all of the applications because of the size of our venue here. Hopefully they will forgive us for not being able to attend here. Maybe they can meet our minister on another program. Distinguished Minister, welcome. If you like, until the questions come in, I can ask some of the questions here. Distinguished Minister, of course, SETA is an establishment of thought. So these institutions for thought, they unite the theory and practical and they want to contribute to politics and diplomacy. So for that, unifying the practical and the theoretical, it is quite important to act as a bridge. So when you look at it, when you think about the think tanks or the international academics, how do you view it? How do you place it in terms of their contributions to foreign policy? First of all, thank you for having me to SETA Foundation, and to our participants here. I want to also extend my gratitude, and those who are watching on the online platforms or soon to listen to us, I want to thank each and every one of the viewers there. Of course, SETA is at this point an international brand. In the last 20 years, their efforts, and I have witnessed all of the stages of SETA and what it has gone through. A lot of my friends had put forth a lot of effort for SETA, and on the sectoral basis and all of the fields, they had a responsibility of looking into them closely, monitoring them, and they try to contribute to international relations. And this is precisely the question, a part of the answer to your question. Because SETA, with the information instruments we have in the academy, applying it in public service and in practical. And so SETA gives the answer to that. So for that, I want to thank each and everyone who had a hand in the organization. And hopefully the number of these institutions will increase, because as a country we need it. Now, as a thought institution, these are places where new ideas are produced, and about processing information, visualization of information, and presenting them are extensively used in this area. And with the public and between these institutions, there is a great need for cooperation. Turkey, due to its history or current situation, is large country and there's a lot of public service areas. The government branches are quite deep and rooted, but in the dynamic situation in the earth, as technology improves and new developments, it pushes us into adapting those new scenarios. So theoretical and the practical side is always uh, in relation, and I believe this is valuable. And of course, the practical side that you put forth in Turkey is quite precious. Of course, there's other think tanks and other institutions, but personally, these thought institutions, I believe I paid great attention to being in cooperation with them. But in Turkey, especially in specific industries, there is trouble to bringing together the ideas, the theoretical side and the practical side, and provide and producing instruments for that. For example, Ankara Social Sciences University or some other think tank institutions, they act as a bridge between the theoretical and the practical, and this is actually something positive. The practical side that you have as public servants, we put forth a lot of effort with hundreds or thousands of our friends. So the practical uh, information that we put forth needs to turn into a model. It needs to turn into information for others to see, and then the cycle will continue by educating uh, the people. And I think think tanks are really important regarding this, and they're quite functional. And we, as the government, needs to support them to increase their number and to make sure that they're qualified. This is also important. Another thing is regarding the discipline of international relations. In general, these thought institutions, there are also institutions that monitor international relations to the Middle East, to Iran, to the West, to the European Union or Asia Pacific. There's thematic institutions as well, and I find them quite valuable as well. And in terms of the subcategories of cybersecurity and security in general, or their security think tanks, these are also important. And the reason is, I'm going to explain briefly. International relations, its tradition was created by Türkiye. It wasn't put forth by Türkiye, but Türkiye, uh, it is an area that Türkiye needs to create its own discipline in. And I remember from my own academic experience when I was doing my PhD in Bilkent, the Americans' stories and their way of telling those stories was actually the same in Turkey. What I thought was there needed was an ontological difference. If they both say the same things, then their study material is the same. So what we need to do is we need to put forth material that suits our experience and our way of working. So in time, the international relations should what I saw was they first looked into what the others were doing. So in practical side, starting with the Anglo-Saxon countries, a lot of our friends have gone forward with their PhDs. They read the theories, their books, and they tried to look from that perspective. But I always criticize that. Of course, you're an academician, you have a master's thesis on intelligence, and in your thesis, there's also the side that looks at the foreign affairs. But I would distinguished minister, you're also an academician, And in your master's thesis, you worked with intelligence. You were also the director for MIT, and you handled the foreign affairs part of this issue. And I wanted to add this question: how do you harmonize theory and practicals? And thank you for your question. Precisely in that regard, I always try to urge the institutions to combine the theoric and practical. Of course, their practical side may be strong, but the information and collective information theory needs to be built up as well. And yes, I did my master's thesis on the intelligence systems, and then I was the director for MIT. And on the digital era, my thesis was also about the new technologies and its place in intelligence. I had to collect a lot of information regarding a lot of countries. So each and every time, I believe that a healthy relation between the theoretical and the practical is it feeds both of them. So there needs to be a continuous flow between them. So if you do not have a practical experience, you cannot feed the theoretical part. And if the theoretical part needs to keep itself vital, you need to have flow of information from the outside. When we look at, especially in the international relations part, these are ensured by the think tanks. Some universities have also worked to do that, but I don't want to advertise them. Sometimes I'm invited as a speaker in America as well. What we have seen is the retired uh, military personnel or diplomats, they receive some responsibilities in universities and other institutions, and they try to uh, transform their practical information to theoretical, and then they're taught to the students. So when the students get late into their careers, they're not really facing a lot of surprises. They learn the theoretical part of it, and they're able to put it into practice. So, and the mechanism that is put forth here, the it is done by the think tanks and thought institutions in Turkey. Of course, them being financially supported and to make sure that people know that this is a career, so the people can, as you know, one of the things that are said in one of the sentences said in these lands is the a qualified work deserves praise. So you need to actually praise people who are doing good work. And when we say think tank, we couldn't really have a lot of praise regarding this, and as the interns were involved and the retired were involved. But in the example of SETA, we we've seen an example where the qualified people are involved in the process. So the people sees that, oh, we are doing something here, but real life is different than this, and SETA have allowed that. And the practitioners, we're doing these, but we do not have any other. But we have someone else that turns what we put into practice into the theoretical information. And the discipline of international relations uh, are diversifying and now has more sub-disciplines. The security research or international relations theories, it is really important to know that main discipline. But in the critical and in criticizing the international relations theories or coming up with new ones or doing research, we need to have a Turkish uh, thought that criticizes this and puts these into practice, both in terms of education and if it is a science. Of course, there's an idea whether this is science or art. It is always discussed. If this area is a science, then the Turkish perspective will also contribute to it. Now, in the discipline of international relations, and where our think tanks contribute a lot, a new Türkiye theory will find its place. Distinguished Minister, of course, the topic is the uh, Turkish vision and goals in foreign affairs, and you had certain evaluations regarding this topic. You also had a written article published in SETA's journal. It also took place in a book published by us. And precisely there, moving forward with what you have said, in here in the global system and transformation, Turkey's strategic climate, uh, in relation to that, there's breaks. And in the new century, the Turkish foreign policy needs to be prepared with a new vision. How do you define that vision? The most important part, or the defining factor of that vision, is Turkey's in the last 22 years, with the initiatives of our president and the AK Party governments, uh, the growth, filling in the gaps of infrastructure, growth in technology, counterterrorism, and we have made strides in these areas. And we're talking about this time period, and our vision needs to be suitable to this time period. Of course, each and every country has a foreign policy, but a lot of the countries do not feel the need to putting forth an foreign policy vision. And whereas there's a definition that they follow, and in small countries, they either follow the vision or the policies, they take their position to their larger roof organizations. However, for Turkey, the foreign policy is dynamic, it's challenging, and actually exciting, and it allows for growth. In a country scale, in our country, of course, we need to have a vision, and that vision, in its name, this foreign policy is about what you want to give out to the world and how you evaluate the world. And this is also affected by the neighboring countries, and it's in close relation to the world issues. For example, in France, and country in Africa that is based on France's uh, external, say, foreign affairs vision. If we compare what we have here, maybe it's going to be quite different. Similarly, China and Russia, we're talking about something important. And when you provide a vision, there's parameters of that vision. One is how much force is your country going to exert? Turkey's force and power keeps reshaping over the world over time. If you and you want, let's say you want to give out a message to the world or to the areas or the regions that you are in. Or third, how do you view other countries? How do you view other civilizations? What is your belief? What is your position? What is your perspective on life? And how does it define the other civilizations? Because this will uh, contribute and take part in your foreign policy vision. And in this, and all of the competencies that you have at this moment, in any event, you see the reflections of it. Africa was only an example. And Turkey, when you look at Africa, their lookout to you is different. And what are the competencies that you can bring in? In a lot of countries, I see a contradiction. When Turkey thought about this, a lot of countries were experiencing it in Pacifics or in the Middle East. let's say technology, finance, or trade, they try to build their relations with which they can get these relations. But they also know that the other country doesn't see them the same way. So, in a relation where there are contradictions, there is a continuity because there's mutual benefit. And when Turkey gets into this uh, process in the value world of its own, they try to be on an equal relation, equal footing. And with this, and we switch over from this more traditional model for relations to a new one. So in Turkey, the internal uh, politics and all of the values that are produced by our people can be turned into a vision and practical on the uh, foreign affairs, and especially in the prioritizing. I always value it as well. The determining the priorities of the foreign policy of Turkey needs to be defined as well. And we have some ethics and values to give out to the world, and we have some values to get for ourselves. And a healthy process, if the healthy process of foreign policies is established on this, both sides are able to grow. Distinguished Minister, and you also had a framework of theoretical side, but we can also get into the practical. You've been the director for MIT for 13 years, and especially in this process, Turkey have experienced great uh, issues, and the defense politics and the security, you were kind of at the junction of all of those policies. And now you have a new responsibility with the as the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and you have new responsibilities. And for that, along with your new duty, how do you harmonize the values that you had? Do you have any uh, difference in your perspective when you're looking at events? So let's ask about that practical side. Thank you very much. It is a question that I need to think about. But my first thoughts I'm going to uh, extend to you. Of course, it's a personal matter. Like you have said, in MIT, in the National Intelligence Agency, we have experienced really troublesome times. And it was an era where we defeated some national threats. And here, essentially, in my mind, of course, there's a national security system. And within that system, we have the foreign policy, we have this diplomacy or politics. And there were different actors that get into this national security. They sometimes energy is also included. But when we look at its classical definition, national security is about intelligence, security, are a direct part of this system. And when I was looking at this national security system, I always looked at this in a as a whole. But in my position, I also had the responsibility of growing within that system. If you do not do the work that the intelligence side of it needs to do, there are some other issues. You need to have correct information flowing to diplomats and the military. And within the system, one qualified intelligence, even 1 liras of investment to intelligence is prevents further investments to the defense industry. So it also has this economical side. And either with the intelligence and military or intelligence and diplomacy relation, Turkey, because of its priorities for counterterrorism and the climate of threat, Turkey needs that military response capability. And in that era, the intelligence agency had also worked about counterterrorism in that era, and its technical capabilities have been shapen in that way. And in relation to foreign policies, there's also the external threat side of it and the general strategy side of it. What I believe is the diplomacy has a good side in which you may see the foreign affairs and you can see the different instruments, the cultural, the security as a main body. You can see the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it is and the elected president and the responsibility for putting forth a strategy, the vision, applying the vision is given to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we, in the 19th century and 21st century idea of foreign affairs, we are kind of transforming it, and uh, we're trying to put forth a more dynamic foreign affairs policy that includes cooperation. And this practical, of course, needs to uh, go along smoothly, and the goals needs to be defined, and the communication between institutions needs to be flowing. Another thing is, if I do my job right and providing a good vision and having a good relation and resolving issues with your counterparts through discourse, then there is less responsibility given to your military, to your police, to your intelligence. If you do not do your job properly, and if the diplomacy is not working, then you need to take your other dynamic factors or instruments into effect. Distinguished Minister, you can also answer this briefly. You talked about this question before. In your prior experience, I want to ask you a question that relates to these days. During your uh, duties as in MIT, in, you also achieved some reforms in terms of intelligence agency, and it also kind of transformed the intelligence agency culture. And similarly, we're talking about a new reform process in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and Turkey diversifying portfolio of external policy. There's also some movement, and Turkey has this deep tradition of foreign affairs that goes back 500 years. So I want to ask this question: between the tradition and the future, the institutional processes are important, the reforms are important in terms of strategic culture and transformation. What can you say to us about them? Now, transformation, tradition, future, and balancing them all, and of keeping the good things of tradition and create a structure that will benefit from the contemporary is a dynamic process. The states or countries or the institutions that cannot do this fall behind or they collapse. And we, especially in terms of national security institutions, either be weapons or diplomacy, we cannot fall behind in these areas. If you fall behind in these fields, we need to be subjected to others, or we will face great risks in diplomacy and politics, like it has happened in the past. And the National Intelligence Agency, after 13 years, I have this important experience. You need to be really careful when you are reforming really deep institutions. When you're trying to change certain things, you should not lose the competency that is deep rooted there. So the process needs to be organic. I had a long reform process in terms of intelligence collecting or redefining the usage of technologies or getting them into effect on all fields, combining the technic intelligence. Back there when I first arrived, the technic intelligence was only a support, but now we combine them and put them on equal footing. And they then started to compete against each other and feed each other. But what's important was to establish this system and make sure it lasted. There was problems with the personnel or the education, and after we laid this all out, what I said was we did all these reforms. All of the branches have been redefined, have been renewed. Our friends have supported this process, but I also need to complete the information side of this. First, how do you educate a new intelligence officer? And there also was a need for an academical side to intelligence efforts. And I have seen uh, there are new initiatives for this education. So by doing the both theoretical side and the practical side, we try to be equal footing around the world. What's important is this has been a really long process for me, but you also face a lot of threats. You will while you're doing the reform, you're also monitoring these threats, and you need to not lose your focus when you're trying to perform these reforms. And there's a lot of psychological operations to the people. However, the people in state service, in public service, should not lose their focus. And without straying from the path, you need to go on. And after I come from this experience, I'm not going to lose a lot of years here. It was easier to do the same things. One is in the intelligence agency, one is multidisciplinary, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs is the same. And now, just on a bigger scale, and by creating some balance between for the administration of these institutions, it is what I focus on the most. This organizational reformists, and we can sit and talk about it. And I take this experience and I was able to apply it within the first year to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Also, our president made a lot of support in that process as well. We made a proposal and they have signed it. Our goal is Turkey for a really long time was in a spiral. When the crisis emerges, the crisis will pull you to the ground. They will take your psychology, they will take your focus, and these security branches are in a way paralyzed. Of course, they will fight against that threat. They are great people, but history doesn't stop there. You need to manage your threats and the opportunities at the same time, simultaneously. So in Latin America, in Africa or Asia Pacific or Middle East, we have a presence. Any crisis in the Middle East, while we're dealing with it, your organization should also monitor the topics and be effective in other regions. Just because you're occupied with one crisis, it doesn't mean that life has stopped. So you, as the state, you should not miss any opportunity. And I support an organizational schematic that supports this. We've made we've in terms of administrating this process, we were successful here, and the old diplomacy methods are no longer here. The external affairs was foreign affairs were almost only done by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but each and every institution today has an external a foreign relations department or the NGOs. So there is high amount of interaction between the world institutions. And as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the ministry, we need to think about, how do I manage this network? We have three approaches. One is, what we need to do is, within our structure, we need to protect the foreign affairs inventory of Turkey. For example, we've established some offices in Africa, three different ones. We are also uh, controlling the Turkic nations. We have rehandled the topic of Iran or Iraq. We had different departments for China. So have our focus on a vast area. So in Africa, with a country, our economic or energy or security relation, and what it is, or the cultural or education, what is our relation with in these areas, and what we're doing to see that, is the responsibility of the office in Africa. However, the economic work done across the world, what is the general picture of Turkey in terms of security or foreign affairs or counterterrorism, energy, culture, information technologies, or other disciplines. And we also established departments that handle these different disciplines. While we are looking at the local, there's departments that has the responsibility of collectively administrating the general other topics. And it's important to extend the practical things that are done over the world to the related departments. And I believe, since there isn't any platforms to extend the information to the practitioners, there's a lack of improvement. Maybe it's a little boring topic and guy kind of it got into a spiral. But when it is ensured, if you establish this system like clockwork, they produce efficiency uh, on their own. And in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we had a chance that our friends are quite qualified. They are smart and they make sacrifices. And this organizational reform, when you bring it forth, they accept it. And also, we need to increase the institutional capacities. And especially the information technologies needs to be extensively used. The logistical area needs to be ensured. And what's the multiplying effect of this? The technology, when we use it in intelligence enough, we will make strides. That's what I have. That's what I believe. And we also need to use the multiplying effect of the technology in diplomacy as well. So renew that we are also extensively working for the last year. You can't really silence me in this topic. This is a topic that I focus really well, so please stop me. Thank you. Now, I want to handle some current issues. In Lebanon, there are some new developments, and Israel's attacks and aggressiveness. We have also always said that their aggressions are not limited with Gaza, and we can see that same perspective on everyone. They have a consensus. And when the first time the Israel's attacks have intensified, you made this statement. uh, from this crisis, there's either going to be peace or a regional war. Do you believe the same today? Yes, I have the same idea. The both possibilities are increasing, and since the start of the war, there were steps taken that would deepen both sides. And to deepen the war, the Netanyahu government and some Western countries are putting forth a lot of efforts to deepen the war. But the two state solution and the peace side, we see a new awakening in the world to deepen that side as well. But both camps are working extensively. When we look at the war dynamic of the event, what we see is, since the 7th of October, the military operation of Israel was is now declared as a genocide today by most countries. This is no longer a critical point or not an argument. It is now a fact. Is reality itself, and the world sees that as it is. There is a genocide, and this genocide will forever be used to define the Palestine issue, and it will change the whole discourse. Currently, we're seeing a genocide. In the hearts of our people cannot bear this weight, and the international community, international law and institutions are not effective in combating it. And the civilization that we have developed over the year, we are seeing the same issues unearthed once again. And on this point, of course, the dynamics of war and they affect psychologies, both the Islamic community and other oppressed people who were left out by the international system. And all of the nations and people are having an awakening. And on this global scale, on the global scale, this also has great effects on politics vision. When we look at it, we've seen it since the start, either with our intelligence officers or the diplomats. What we have here, there is a target of Netanyahu, and that is first focusing on Gaza, removing all threats that he sees, or that structure is not Hamas, but Gaza as a whole. They're using that as an excuse to attack the entirety of Gaza. And later, we've known that he would move towards Lebanon. And we were also extending that information to related departments. And in those times, the Western countries came to Turkey as well. They said, speak with Hezbollah, speak with Iran, make sure that they do not intervene in this war. Israel will only keep it in Gaza. But what we always said was, they will not stop there. And the Netanyahu's government will plunge the area into chaos, and the war will spread. And since they have done that, as with the unconditional support given by America and England, they feel quite safe. Israel feels safe. But the Israeli state, after the 10 years, they have also established this 10-year threat for themselves. Just with a military or bullying, there is a political de facto situation, because it may look like it is accepted by the population there in the region. However, in the following years, for at least 10 years, a lot of the movements or for the states in the region, their security dynamics will be shaken from their roots. And this, as long as Israel is present in the region, they will cause them to always look over the shoulder. You cannot eradicate all of the people, all of the states. You can kill some of them. You may commit genocide on them, but the others will come back to find you. So when we look at the peaceful side, the two-state solution is seen as mandatory, especially in America or other places. Everyone says that there needs to be a two-state solution. But the problem is the Americans can't really pressure the Israeli government on this point. And there is a psychological or the historic conditioning. There's a mental thing. There's mental captivity. They do not have that question. What happens when a state commits genocide in which this state was committed genocide on them before. No one thought about this before. Never thought about that before. So when we're faced with this reality, and the ideas kind of contradict itself. So because they have this great side of politics completely based on genocide. In America, there are networks or alliances or people who benefit from this system. When life goes on, what you see suddenly is the state that you protect because they were subjected to genocide, now they're doing genocide on their own. And so there's a constriction of system here. And to, when would it change itself? Until it hits the wall. Right now, Israel's uh, genocide, there is no structures that can prevent it. America can't do that because their internal structure and politics are built upon supporting Israel unconditionally. The system is designed that way. They do not foresee such a genocide. But when will it stop? It needs to hit the wall. But what would be the effects of this impact? That's something else. But what I'm going to say is, in the world, either with the Islamic states or the Western states or all other states, they support the solution of a state given to the Palestinians. And you know, the Oslo process, and this is also made with us, and it causes, it is something that we use while we're rebuilding discourse. The Oslo process was something that gave them the state at the end of the process. They do not give it at the start of the process, but that the end of that process doesn't come. And Israel made, especially Netanyahu, made great efforts to make sure that the process is not finalized. And the Palestinian state waited. When you do not produce conflict, uh, this de facto model, they try to present it as solid. But what we have seen in the 7th of October, it was not a structure or model that the Palestinian people would be content with. Even if the government has no issues with it, the people of Palestine uh, were not accepting this uh, de facto situation. And Israel's invasion creates such a structure that a lot of countries across the world acknowledge Palestine as a state, but almost none of them can't directly establish a trade relation or a diplomatic relation. So it's not acceptable. And behind this view throughout the world, how much effort or sacrifice is going to be put forth behind it, it's not known. And with the leadership of our president, we are doing everything in our power to establish this two-state solution. It is important for the peace of the Palestinians, for the region and the world. So pay attention to it. You heed this call, because otherwise this breaking line in that region will trigger other fault lines across the world. This is something easy to see. The world views this closely, monitors this closely, but Western centered internal politics have this structure of ignoring these critical signals. They do not have the structure to rebuild their internal politics. Distinguished Minister, both from our guests here and on the digital platforms, we have received some questions. I'm going to combine two questions. You've also talked about it. On one side, you have this Israel's genocide, and we're also seeing some uh, voices raised in the streets of the Western countries. There's some increased awareness, especially in the UN. There are some positive decisions taken for this future of Palestine. So you have one on the one side you have this, and the Palestine topic is, of course, the you also talked about the America's stance on this topic. On the other side, in the international system, there is a system that is based on norms. But when the topic of Palestine have risen and the genocide of Israel came into question, their structure kind of broke down. So from that, this norm-based discourse of the West, how is it going to be reconstructed in the future? What I think is, on one side, your question is quite valuable, but on the other side, it's a question that makes me saddened, not because you ask it, but the nature of the questions makes me sad. What kind of a system the West is going to establish? Why are we waiting for them? In these highest societies in the world, the fact that they're not behind this initiative is actually it's a sad sight to see. I'm talking about this without giving any names. I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Otherwise, I would give some names as well. But I'm responsible of making sure that our relations goes on well. But we're discussing certain topics here. What we have seen in the reality of the world, we need to underline some of them. Now, truly, in a lot of the large countries that may come to your mind, no one no one is thinking about how to establish a global system or how to build a system that will address the needs of the people. They do not have a concern about it. How do we benefit best from the current situation, or how do we manipulate the current system towards ourselves? And if you're a UN Security Council uh, member, the people there do not really criticize the current system, this Western centric system. They have at least mid to high level countries, and especially on this point, there is a uh, point of issue, and some of the UN Security Council members needs to needs to put forth some ideas about changing the system. Their criticization was never the international system. We want to underline this. Their criticism was about the West. But we, both from the West and the East and the UN Security Council, we're bringing forth a criticization for the whole system. We do not talk about the fight between the West and the East. But what we say is, in the current global system, there is the Western actors and the Eastern actors, and this system does not address the needs of the people. However, other countries, the representatives from the East, they criticize the West, and vice versa. Now, that's why the question that you ask is right, but there's a caveat. The fact that how the parameters of the new system is going to happen, or how is it going to rebuild, waiting that change from the West is a dramatic is dramatic for society. All of the civilizations on this point needs to take initiative and remobilize, and they need to have a voice. And here, since it's a positive example, I will mention their name. In For Brazil, especially under the administration of Lula, uh, they had they're having efforts to question the system across the world, especially in the G20. Uh, Chair is also on them, and when we attended the uh, conference of ministers, they're putting forth ideas and asking the questions about improving the global system. And our president is also going to attend a summit. And so Brazil is a positive example in that regard. And the South Asia is also has some. South Africa also has some voice regarding the issue in Gaza, but especially the UN Security Council members, they're content with the current system, and they don't have initiatives or some questions about changing the system. So we need to think about how to bring the other actors as well. And precisely here, our president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, has some criticization in terms of the global system. You go to UN, they have some meetings and they will talk about the current situation in the world. And until now, our president and Türkiye had this understanding of the world is greater than five. And we're also talking about a crisis of legitimacy in terms of the global system. So for that, towards the future, both for the international institutions, this discourse of reform, do you think that it will provide a result? Or if it's going to provide the result, how do we increase awareness about it? Now, to if we established healthy approaches, I see the potential for a positive result. We talk about this with the international actors as well. And what we see is they don't really want to jeopardize their current benefiting positions. And what they want to do they have this approach of easing some of the concerns. For example, taking some more members into the UN Security Council. Now, how can this solve the current issue? It's a separate discussion. And there are some different perspectives on this point where we can follow. But for permanent solution, so for permanent solution, we need to have both on the theory and practical. I do not really see in international relations some courage. And theoretically, when this topic is discussed, it's kind of built upon realism. The country's behavior is more about oriented towards their benefit. And since all of the countries have this approach, they conflict from time to time. So what our approach is, uh, what you want for yourself, you should also want for the others. And there is the International Human Rights Declaration of the UN, but in this uh, national and the current world situation and the way of conducting government, it kind of contradicts. If we think about UN representing the people, they need to have an environment where they can feel equal. And I believe this approach is essential, especially with the leadership of our president and Turkey. This uh, this ethics oriented approach, but ethics is only valuable if you have the power to supporting it. If you have the opportunity of being unethical, if you do not oppress people, and if you follow an ethical diplomacy, then people will respect you. And Turkey is precisely on this point, this increased capability and capacity, the ethical uh, proposals become even more valuable. We need to further improve this. But the people who benefit from the system, they don't want to change it. But those who do not benefit, they try to do something among themselves. But throughout history of civilization, what we have seen is, and what scares me the most when it comes to ethics, the world system, without it getting into a large crisis or breaking down, we may not have a permanent uh, positive structure. And our current system is established after the Second World War. And this system, when it was institutionalized, there were 55 states, and now there's even greater. The topics have increased, the balance of power have changed, the younger actors have grown up and they became more competent. So to manage this power matrix and think about the benefit of all of the parties, we need a new system. And on some points, we do this. For example, regulations about transportation or trade. But in some areas, countries needs to does not demonstrate ethics-based approaches, and it leads to issues. And we see some stalemate in terms of the Security Council. There's an ongoing war with Russia and Ukraine, and especially and America seeing the Chinese growth, economic growth, as a threat after this definition. We are also talking about uh, some threat assessment about China. So from the opponent, it's ranges from an opponent to an enemy, and there's different definitions. And if that's in that case, the UN Council members sometimes they have a consensus on certain topics, but they conflict on the others. We're monitoring this process closely, and what's important is Turkey, not only with the amount of the global scale issues, but especially about the processing of that system, Turkey has a proposal, has a thought, and I believe uh, as a country we need to stand behind this. Distinguished Minister, from the viewers, from the listeners, we have uh, we kind of want to ask some questions with the starting from the most relevant, and we will slowly conclude. So, from our viewers, there's a question about based on Turkey, and I want to preface this question with two sub questions. One is from the European Union. The question is: in 29th of August, the European Union Ministers of Foreign Affairs meeting you have attended. Do we have, looking into the future, do we have a projection in terms of membership to the EU? And this question, what is the effect? Also, what is the effect of the European Union relations affected by the Russian-Ukrainian war? Now, European Union membership and the questions about it, we're also always having to answer them. This is a dynamic process, and for Turkey, this process has some continuous side, either as a prime minister or a president. Our president, each and every time after he's elected, reviews the new or redefines the foreign affairs policy and other policies, and he touches upon some points. And after the elections, the European Union membership process, in terms of that, our stance haven't changed. As the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we're working in line with that stance, and we're conducting our diplomacy in line with that. And European Union, the reason why I say this is regarding the European Union membership is the people who want to be a member first needs to have this declaration of will. And in the last 20 years, we didn't change this declaration of will. And we're waiting for a membership for over 50 years. But the European Union, its political will is lacking. The central countries, they do not want to take Turkey in, and the surrounding countries, even if they want, they cannot have a stance that would trouble the central countries. As the UK leaves the European Union, there is a geopolitical, geostrategical breakdown. There is a unexpected war, and Europe and the European Union became a part of it. Currently, they're paying controllable amounts. They provide the finance, they provide the weapons and ammunition, and the people's lives that are lost are in Ukraine. And also, there are some restrictions applied to Russia. And starting with the energy sector, uh, this trade relations are broken down, and the economy and inflation take some hits. It has great reflections that puts a lot of weight to Europe. But they have also seen that if this threat was not against Ukraine, but to their own, they do not have the means of protecting themselves. And in America, we have a European Union that left their fate to the elections in America. When a government comes in America and says, I'm not going to support the security of a European Union, so they may face a great dilemma. And Turkey, both in security, was going to contribute a lot to the European Union and will gain a lot. And currently, with our relations with Europe, if we want to be realistic, we have mutual benefits in our relations, especially regarding foreign trade. And our trade volume is high. The technology transfer, production, or tourism are also something that feeds both each other, both sides. And we are trying to further this process. But the application and membership to the European Union has different sides when it comes to identity politics. They kind of define Muslims and Turks as other. When I talk about my colleagues, uh, I always say to them, you have this supranational structure, you have this political entity, but you cannot but you have issue you don't have any stance about being a super civilizational structure. But the think tank side is beneficial for that. By defining the issues, you can kind of clearly put forth the issues, and you can achieve projecting it to the other side better. Now, the world needs cooperation on this point. Other civilizations, other countries with around the same goals and universal ideas, while protecting their own identity, they need to benefit the growth across the world, and a system needs to be established for this. We're talking about a structure, a system such as this. And the European Union uh, have is conducting its growth on identity politics. Of course, there are colleagues in European Union that sees this trend, but they have no capacity of standing against this current trend. But as we also have, starting with trade, we have a lot of deep relations, or the customs union, and in terms of visa liberalization, we have a lot of topics we need to discuss, or investments. We're continuing with those relations. Of course, the European Union department, we have of course, the Minister of Foreign Affairs are also a part in the discussions of the European Union in some topics. So the European Union and Turkey needs to be in more cooperation with its surroundings. And in the meeting we have attended, this was the truth that was put forth. Of course, we're in the membership process. We are not really able to take steps from the both sides, but the life goes on in Africa, in the in the Caucasia region, or in the Mediterranean. There is in the Balkans a lot of issues where the Turkey is effective. So by not cutting in front of each other, by with harmony, how do we manage these topics? How do we uh, talk about this in a civilized way? This is kind of what we do at the moment. But Turkey is acting rationally and surprisingly rationally. A lot of the actors, their feeling their feeling and emotions are irrational, or they're acting identity based. Hopefully, some of the other actors in the European Union are able to silence them so that we can continue that way. But at the end of the day, this is a diplomatic struggle. We are not giving up on it. We are going to extend our ideas and our benefits. Of course, when we're talking, we are not only thinking about our own benefit. The Turkish foreign policy also has that side of it. Even if we're talking about an international institution or a country, we are thinking about the benefit of both sides. And by determining that point, we want to continue from that point. And if you're able to do that, you're able to better manage the issue. And if you have that approach, if you don't have that approach, the other side will not listen to you. Who's stronger will get the benefits. But why are we a trusted partner? We, even if in the moments where we are strong, we are also taking steps, uh, just steps that also keeps in mind the benefit of the other side. And this kind of differentiates Turkish diplomacy. Thank you very much. This was a really extended answer to the question. And we asked this, the new question that I'm going to ask is going to be added to the previous one. And regarding this, a lot of questions came into us. Regarding the BRICS membership of Turkey, do we have an official step or not? We don't, as the public do not know. The Turkey wants to be a member, but the members in BRICS, how do they view the membership of Turkey? The BRICS membership in the Turkey's foreign policy vision. We talked about the vision of Turkey in terms of foreign relations and foreign diplomacy. The BRICS membership, where do you place it in the foreign policy vision of Turkey? Now, this is an ongoing process. As they say, this is work in progress, because the BRICS itself also transforms and changes. It also has it is also seeking institutionalization, and they have this, of course, a declaring of will with the founding countries. They want to bring forth their economic capacity and how to better further that. Then they have this starting point. But of course, in the last 3 to 4 years, there have been some developments that seriously affects BRICS, either with the Russian-Ukrainian war or the America and China competition, but and the different definition of that competition. And the BRICS kind of is shifting, has the risk of shifting to a political platform instead of an economic one. But we currently see, on our perspective, that they protect their core value. And it's important for us because sometimes it's discussed in the AK Party government, sometimes has some trouble or doesn't really put forth a lot of effort in this point. What does it mean to be domestic? and we couldn't really have that an idea about its reflections on foreign policy. The example of European Union and BRICS is a great example of this. We never handled these topics in the perspective of Westernism. When you try to uh, these other ideologies, if you don't have an identity of your own, or if that process is not done properly, or if you view your identity as not enough, you may look for those ideologies. But we know our own national values as Turkey. We moving from our own ideas and values, how do we put forth policies, and how do we make create our relations in mind with our values, so we have that competency. So our journey of foreign policy or foreign affairs, either to the west, to the south, or north, we know ourselves. And we are going there to do business with them. We are not going there to adopt a new identity. Under different topics, of course, there are some topics discussed, uh, politicized topics. So, but we're moving from our own values. Of course, in the Turkish world or the Islamic world, we have some values reflected to our foreign policies, but the Black Sea Economic Community, or regarding the Middle East, about our uh, neighbors, we have multi-layered and diversified initiatives. And if you're sure of yourself, by not conflicting these values with the ideas, you can protect the processes. But regarding BRICS, I want to say this. Uh, you're trying to do this, but are you trying to leave from there? But this is on the political discourse. We need to kind of update this. We're kind of moving along with the Cold War ideas. But also, I want to urge the think tanks and to take some responsibility about updating the new terms. But of course, politics sometimes want to use certain terms with some dedication. But BRICS, we're looking at the economic environment. How much will it improve? And believe us that we don't want to see this. Outside of our world, there are some different whole new worlds established. We don't want to left out of it. We're doing some uh, qualified discussion with them. There are some initiatives with the Turkic nation. We have this process in the European Union, or in America, we can have a special agreement, or the China, having bilateral relations with them, because there is a lot of uh, trade that needs to be utilized. We have 50 billion dollars of trade. In the balance of trade with China is almost completely to the benefit of them. So we need to protect, also put our own benefits on the core as well. And with ethics and values in mind, we're trying to move along the process. But we're not naive when it comes to this competition in the world. We know where it's at, or how do we benefit from that event or that one. Of course, we are doing our monitoring deeply. And as you asked, in regarding the think tanks and the academics, if we feel that our mind currently is not enough, we go and also ask experienced or qualified people. We sit with them, and we say this is the situation. There is these valuables in this complex issue. We want to solve this issue. Are there any other variables that we do not see? We have are are we dealing with a 5 variable issue or a 6 variable issue? So our discussions regarding that constantly continues, because at the end of the day, the people and the nations, both in living values, they are complex. But when you get into practical, you need to act rationally and based on reality. So the search for a higher mind needs to continue. And we're coming to a close. Before that, my last question, it's a question asked by our students. We've talked about academics or the practical and vision. Our students have asked that, uh, esteemed minister, for your students that seeks a career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what would you suggest to them? Can you give some information regarding that? First of all, from here through you, I want to extend this, uh, I want to state this to all of my young friends. To the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it's great that you are curious about it. And if you're not, you should. From online, in this climate where you are connected to the world, it's also a physical way of connecting with them in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. You can see it in the real environment. To the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have this rooted exam process. We also want to change that over time, of course, but sometimes it's difficult to make some changes. But I always think about, are we doing the right thing here? Or do we take this in? Or are we taking in the right people? But on the website regarding the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we have a lot of different information, which questions are asked or what competencies you need to have. But other than that, I suggest that you join the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because it's not only going to develop you personally, but it is also a great way of serving your people and the country. Esteemed Minister, in the portfolio of foreign affairs and foreign diplomacy, there are important topics that and questions have come in about them. But as a last question, maybe do you have anything to add regarding that on top of this? If you leave it to me, I would have a lot of topics to add on to. Like I said, since I'm constantly thinking about topics that concern me, I have some ideas constantly. But at the end of the day, what I can say is the Turkish foreign diplomacy, both in the practitioners, with the diplomats, or all parties that support them, or other institutions of our government, they all come together and we move along this journey in a dynamic way. And here we're closely monitoring the regional developments, and with our monitoring and with the competencies that we develop as a country, we're always thinking about how do we reflect it to our foreign policy. But what I have also seen is we have certain competencies, and I also seen this in the last few years. One is a great political leadership. I'm talking about foreign policy. Of course, it's also valid for the internal policies as well. But for the foreign policy, you need to have great leadership. The second, for the integrity of your country's and security of your country's politics, the population dynamics and the economics side is quite important. In foreign policy, in our work, they all contribute to what we do. And also, our region, in the last 20 years especially, have been subjected to great conflict. Our north, now it's the north, in 90s, the Balkans. There's great conflict in these regions, and each and every one has some effects in the economy or security of Turkey. And these effects, of course, we are trying to minimize these effects. We are always having some successful processes regarding that, but our main priority in foreign policy is, in our region, we should not let a zone of crisis that we cannot control. We need to be the ones to work to stop those developments or crises from emerging. And the wars and conflicts in this region does not benefit any of the countries. They cannot provide their people with fundamental support, or they won't have the investments. And Turkey, regarding our region, you then take people from outside. So with that vision, we're going to continue working. And I await our new friends uh, among our ranks, and I want the think tanks and thought leaders and institutions to be in close cooperation with us. I value cooperations with the universities under the guise of Antalya Diplomacy Forum. We have a serious initiative. I talked about my colleagues. A lot of the academicians uh, join in, and they're providing their ideas. And in the ambassadors meeting, for the first time, we had a meeting with the academicians. We're going to hold some sessions. And that is precisely about the unity of practical and the theoretical. It's going to be a great platform, and I believe that we seriously need such a thing. And I want to once again thank SETA for being a great platform for this, and thank you for having me. Distinguished Minister, thank you for taking some time out of your busy schedule and coming here. Uh, and I believe that our participants have also benefited greatly for this. I want to once again thank you and the people who follow us on the digital platforms, and also the people who are with us here today. And SETA's and see you until the next program of SETA. And distinguished minister, thank you very much.